And welcome back. It's about that time every day of the week when we have our conversation and discussion. Today we have a special guest, or two special guests actually, but before we delve into that conversation, here is a special report prepared by Felix Nguma on our conversation.
The race for the 2023 general election has brought to the front burner the leadership question in Nigeria. After 6 decades of gaining independence, Nigeria has continued to experience a myriad of challenges such as insecurity, economic recession, educational challenges, infrastructural deficit, ethnic bigotry, and a whole lot of crises that confront our development. More often than not, the focus has been on these challenges as if they are human. But recently, public commentators as well as some Nigerians are blaming all that is bedeviling the country on leadership.
I think they might be true, in the sense that without getting leadership right, how do you manage the economy of the state? How do you manage the welfare of the people? How do you manage the security of the people? And when you have the leaders who are supposed to be taking decisions, not taking right decisions or not communicating clearly to the people, where does that come from?
Nigeria is a promise of greatness. When you look at the natural endowment, which we have fabulously, given by our Creator, in terms of agriculture, solid minerals, oil and gas, human capital, the size of the land, our economy itself. We are the most populous country on the continent of Africa, and we play big in the global economic, social, political setting. And give Nigeria a chance outside this country. He's either a number one or a very good number two in sports, in politics, in business, in every facet of life that you can think of. Nigerians excel. So for us not to be able to make a good showing in terms of how we govern ourselves is something that really questions our leadership, capacity. I mean, the leadership that we normally end up with.
Getting the right leadership for Nigeria is fundamental because visionary leaders steer the nation along the paths of development. Statistically, Nigerians have had about 6 opportunities to elect leaders into governance since its return to democracy in 1999. However, none seem to have provided the required quality to end the numerous crises affecting the country. As another opportunity beacons for Nigerians who are also the electorates, there is a great responsibility for them to elect leaders who can turn things around for the country.
We're moving into the 2023 general elections. It is important for us to address, issues and put it rightly too, that some vacancies have been declared, both at the national level, at the state level, at the community level, for constituencies and so on and so. There is a massive, declaration, of available seats. These seats have been contested at the local government levels. And we are seeing some signs that are not right for people who did not contest election, and then you are giving them the right to contest. In the final analysis, we are seeing leadership issues because we have laws that protect.
How do we always end up with bad leadership? It's from the recruitment of leadership, which is the elections, which is the primaries that we normally conduct. How to recruit, leadership. And again, yes, we have an electoral law now that has provided the legal framework for the business of recruitment of leadership to the elections. But I'm calling on Nigerians not to rest on their arse, because why? The electoral law has brought into the process a lot of innovations, digitalization. But there's a big slack, which is a big weakness that we have discovered. The counting. There's a popular saying that it's not those who cast their votes that determine who wins, but those who count.
We need to look at the fact that citizens, being a citizen is the highest office of the land. It also, indicates responsibility. It is responsibility, and responsibility is an obligation. We have the obligation to look at the people who have come as candidates for these, vacancies, to be able to choose rightly.
Also, this responsibility must be geared towards strengthening the various institutions in the country to checkmate the excessiveness of the leaders when elected.
I do acknowledge that where you have many people who are corrupt, there are still a few Nigerians that are not corrupt. And so their integrity is a question. And so as we go into the election, we call on Nigerians to shine their eyes, to make sure that they vote for leaders that they think can deliver.
Nigeria has the potential to lead Africa and also become a key player in the community of nations. But her leadership deficiency has been a bane in articulating these gifts for the country and her citizens. As the country prepares for the 2023 general election, the world will be beaming its searchlight on Nigeria to know if the Nigerian electorate will right its leadership deficiency this time through the ballots.
We will be reflecting on the Nigerian 62nd independence anniversary and the leadership question as we approach the 2023 elections. In our interview segment, we will be talking with international leadership and human development expert, Professor Vincent Anibogu, via Zoom. Welcome to the show, Professor Vincent Anibogu.
Thank you so much for having me again.
It's a pleasure. Welcome. Thank you. Also joining us in the studio is international analyst and government development expert. He is also in the studio with me, and he is no other than Menasra Kogo Umar. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio, sir.
Happy Independence Anniversary.
And I particularly like your attire. It's very Nigerian.
Yes.
All right, so let me begin with you, sir, in the studio and ask this particular question.
Yes.
In light of the global conflicts, in light of the global social issues, political issues, the tectonic political shifting plates internationally, what kind of leadership does Nigeria need?
Well, before we go into the question of the kind of leadership we need, first of all, we have to really prioritize our own interests.
Okay.
Conflict of priority areas at the local level, at the continental level, at the international levels, are having direct adverse effect regarding whatever type of political experiment we want to do. Constitutionally speaking, the grand norm is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, which has brought about the type of political system we are to run. It brought about the type of democratic experiment, presidential. At the apex level, 2 chambers of the National Assembly; at the state level, 1 chamber, as well as at the local government.
Okay.
But where we are having the problem is the distinction between the letters and the action. That is where we are normally having problems. For example, if you look at the democratic experiment moving towards 2023 general elections. Section 97 of the Electoral Act, for example, clearly talks about the prohibition of electioneering campaigns on the basis of tribal, ethnic, religious, or geopolitical belongings. In other words, prior campaign should be based
issue-based. Okay.
So the issues that you will bring that will determine whether or not you are a qualified material to be this thing. And then secondly, Section 94 of the Electoral Act says political parties should not start any campaign activities until 150 days before the election. But here you are long ago they have
if I may, sorry, because all of these issues eventually fall on leadership, and we will have time to break this furthermore. But if I might ask straight directly to the question, what type of leader, because all these are problems that need to be solved, and you need a leader to be able to solve those problems, especially looking at the global issues that we talked about.
We want a leader that is symbolism of Section 15, subsection 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That particular section talks about the motto of the Federal Republic.
Yes, it
Unity
does.
and faith, peace and progress. We want a leader that is a symbol of unity. National unity, national cohesion, national heritage.
Fantastic.
Wherever you are, he should be able to galvanize and then take you as one. And then we should be a leader that should tell his own policies, executions
All right.
towards peace and
Thank you.
stability.
A
for the
leader
nation.
who symbolizes unity and a leader who can articulate what he stands
Very
for.
good, very
All right. Professor Nigbogo would like to take your own perspective.
First of all, again, thank you for inviting me. I think one of the challenges we keep having in Nigeria is that we keep failing to understand that national development is a system, it is a process. And it begins with, first of all, agreeing with the people the kind of nation that you want to develop. For example, Singapore, and I keep referring to Singapore because it is a proven model. Nigeria doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. Whatever we are struggling with has already been overcome by many nations and they have moved on. What did Singapore do? First of all, they created a clear vision of the nation they wanted to create and got everybody to buy into it. Number one, they agreed that they will create a corruption-free nation. Number two, that they will create a nation that is multicultural, multi-religious, and multilingual, where everybody coexists. Number three, they agree that they want to build a society where all the workforce, they have competence, they have skills, and they are morally upright. Competence, skills, and moral uprightness. They agree that that's the society they wanted to create. Number four, they even agree to build a society where the people will have a savings culture. So they agree from the onset that they will teach their people to save as much as 30 to 35% of their earnings. Now, for every one of these areas, they create an institution to make sure that it is done. So, for example, if they agree to create a society of competent, skilled, and morally upright citizens, obviously the education sector must be set up to meet those requirements. So you don't run a nation in a vacuum. You run a nation in a context of clearly agreed vision of what you want the nation to look like. Now look at Nigeria for 62 years. Tell me, where is the correlation between what government is doing and a clear national vision we are pursuing? There's such a disconnection that many a time you almost want to ask the question, where are we going? These programs we are executing, which aspect of our national vision is it going to bring about? And that leads me to the next question. If your vision is to create a corruption-free society, therefore you cannot elect a leader who is corrupt, who cannot uphold that value. If your vision is to create an education system of excellent, morally upright, and skilled citizens, you cannot elect a leader who doesn't understand how to establish quality education system.
Thank you very much.
Incidentally,
Thank you very much, Professor
because
Nibogo.
Singapore
Thank
set
you.
those things as a goal, they invariably ended up developing the #1 education system. But not only is it #1, they have now developed the most disciplined people in the world. There
Thank
has
you.
to be a
Thank you, sir.
correlation
Thank you, sir.
between national
So,
vision
essentially, what
and
you're
the
saying is,
leadership.
first of all, we have to agree on the type of leader, on the type of country we want to build before we even talk about electing the kind of leader. Because if you don't know the kind of country, you don't know the kind of leader who can pioneer the country. You also talked about, he mentioned that there's a general consensus. We want a corrupt-free country. We want a leader who can save for the rainy day, and we want someone who is progressive, who can solve our problems. So what we know, what we require, what people want is generally known. But we have a small problem. And how do we overcome this problem? This problem is simple. The political process at the party level that produces this political leaders to be elected is very heavy on cash. The cost of winning a ticket for most political parties is prohibitive, especially for the presidential and the gubernatorial elections. How can we solve this problem in Africa so more credible people who don't have millions of naira to throw around will be able to get win the primaries and therefore have a chance to get elected?
Well, whatever embraces the kleptonic capitalist type of contractocratic politics that we are practicing in Nigeria, definitely it is capitalist intensive. And democracy, when you look at it, it is not in tandem with the cultural and practical realities of our own state of the economy, of our own history, of our own vision, of our own historical heritage.
So what would you rather?
What we should take into cognizance some of the constitutional provisions we are having in the country. For example, if you are to be a leader, you should have respect to Section 14, subsection 1 of Nigeria's constitution that says sovereignty belongs to the people.
Yes.
People should be the center point of whatever policy you will evolve.
Yes.
And then Section 14, subsection 2 says that security and welfare of the citizenry is the primary, the most smallest responsibility of governance. And then the same thing talks about the need for you to respect culture, customs, and traditions. That is as per Section 21 of the Constitution. And then it further goes about that you should.
But this does not. Sorry, sir. Sorry to interject. Yes. This does not help us solve the problem of how we can ensure that our political systems, the various systems that run the political parties that produce the candidates who are going to run for election, becomes easier, more amenable to people of character, integrity, who may not have a lot of money to throw around. How do we come across that problem? That's what I'm asking. But hold that thought. I'm going to talk to Professor Anibogo. Professor Anibogo, how do we overcome this issue of it being very difficult for people of integrity, character, and who may not have a lot of money to run through our various political party systems?
So let me first of all remind you, there was a time when good people had access to politics, but they shunned politics. Many of us intentionally stayed away from politics because we keep saying that it is dirty. And the truth is that whenever good people stay away from anything, bad people will take over. So if we know how we abstained, how we stayed away from the process, we're going to have to gradually work our way back. And that's why I like what is happening in Nigeria. Even the youth are becoming interested in politics. And politics is still a game of numbers. If we register en masse in all the various political parties and make up our mind to become part of the process, from the local government decision-making process to the state and ultimately to the national, then the exception will gradually become the rule.
Okay.
Our involvement at the local level will gradually dilute out, if I may use that word, the influence of the wicked.
So if I may get you right, sorry, Professor, if I may get you right, Professor, if I may get you right, that what we need to do is the young people and other people who are adversely affected by the present political system need to get actively involved in the political system, populate the system till they form a critical mass capable of change.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Because
Sorry.
our act.
Thank you, Professor. So this is the same question. We're going to come back at this now, but a different angle of the question. Typically in Nigerian politics and across Africa, the prospective leader to be elected is a servant of the people during the campaigns. And once the leader gets into office, he becomes the lord of all, even exalting himself in many cases above the laws of the land. How can we deal with this issue where the leader gets in and his people around him make him forget that he was democratically elected? Maybe he forgets that the people are sovereign and the welfare of his people are his primary responsibility, his or her primary responsibility.
Social society groups should really be up and doing and project the need for the entrenchment of social contract in electioneering processes. In Nigeria, anybody can come and say whatever slogan he wants to say, and at the end, if he can give money or if he can convince you, even if it's to make you laugh, you will be comfortable to vote for him. There should be a system whereby social groups, political groups, and social interest associations should be able to be predicating that during electioneering campaigns, wherever you go, there must be a pact that should be entered into.
But
pacts,
it's not the first time. Pacts have been entered before, pacts have been broken. So anyway, I'm going to take this to Professor, and you could round up with this. We just have a few minutes left, just about a couple of minutes. How do we deal with this particular turning issue? Because African leaders, many African leaders are servant or prospective servant of the people. They feel for the people. They share their problems during the elections, and when they're elected, they become lord of all, even above the constitution. How do we deal with this issue?
I totally agree with my co-guest. The answer is to have signed a social contract with the leaders. You must agree with them before they go into office on expectations and even agree on monitoring procedures. What happens is that in Nigeria in particular, we are so self-centered that once I am satisfied, once I get my own reward, I disappear. I don't take the interests and the issues of others at heart. But if we refuse to be settled individually and insist on collective reward, on collective participation, then when the time comes for them to give account of what they have done, we refuse to be compromised. We insist on accountability. We insist on being given a full report on what has been done. And if that's not done, the political leaders know there will be reprisals. Once they know there are no reprisals,
thank you, sir. Sorry, we're almost out of time at this particular time. Thank you for joining in, and we will have this conversation again. Thank you. So now coming back to you on this particular issue,
yes.
Several times, I'm going to drive it home again, several times we have had this. Many communities, many prospective leaders have gone to the local government level, they've gone to state levels and national levels. They have said, if we come in, we will do X, Y, Z, and based on this, elect me. And when they get into office, it changes. You just have about 30 seconds or so to round up all of this.
Yes.
How can we, once and for all, you're advising all of Nigerians, how can we, once of all, solve this issue and get leaders who will have us at the back of their minds when they get into office?
We should expand the network for political education. People should be sensitized so them to know that they are the real owners of democracy. The democracy should be taken the ownership by the common people, the majority of the people. That is one. And then number two, institutions should be up and doing. There are institutions of checkmating corruption, institutions like the Electoral Commission, institutions that are responsible for checkmating all these bad deeds, provided under Section 153 of the Constitution. These institutions are now respecting only the seals of authority rather than respecting the oath of office by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Institutions should be responsible to the citizenry, not to those in power.
Thank you very much. And on that particular line, we would like to thank you for joining us. Minister, what you said is exactly right. Institutions, the loyalty should be to the oath of office, not just the seal of office. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting conversation, and we would like to have this conversation again.